You know, for decades, we've told people with obesity to just eat less and move more. And we are in obesity medicine where we were in mental health 3 or 4 decades ago. Before the onset of real pharmacotherapeutic options, real treatments, if you will, for depression and for bipolar and schizophrenia, etc., we used to tell people with depression literally to cheer up. And then we realized, thankfully, that the world is round and that this was a disease that needed compassion first and empathy and proper treatments. And with that, the science came and the science delivered and the treatments came. And fortunately, we are getting there in terms of the empathy following that science. And we don't shy away from the discussion anymore. And that has to happen in obesity. It's the greatest public health crisis our country has ever seen. It's a disease that knows no boundaries in terms of gender, in terms of socioeconomics, in terms of race, ethnicity, ethnocultural background, etc. It covers the waterfront. There is a complex physiology that's responsible for this disease that we have allowed the sort of dieting industry to take over. We know, for example, that there's a huge amount of genetics involved in how much weight you will gain and you will lose in your lifetime. So anywhere between 60 and 80% of obesity is genetic. On an evolutionary front, we have evolved to store energy and to not starve. And so genetically speaking, we've selected for genes that prevented us from starving to death over thousands and thousands of years. So some of this is an evolutionary or a biological advantage gone awry. Whether your brain perceives hunger or fullness is hormonal. Whether you crave chocolate at 5 in the afternoon or not is actually biochemical. It's not a willpower issue. Your behaviors around food, your timing of hunger and fullness, etc., is a dance between your gut and your sort of fat tissue body storage and your brain. And it's a lot more complicated than just the amounts of foods or the types of foods we eat. It's things like the temperature of the rooms we live in are artificial. The amount of sleep and wake we get in a day is artificial. Our days, just by the nature of sort of how we structure our days, we used to work by daylight and sleep by nighttime, and we don't do that anymore. You know, 30% of the population works shift work, for example. So there's this massive, complicated system at play here environmentally, and who knows what it's doing to our everyday genetics to turn on dysfunction in one hormone or another that causes, let's say, a snowball effect, both on the genetics front and on the hormonal front, and then keeps us in that system that perpetuates that dysfunction long term. I'm so proud that as a doctor, I have been taught to first do no harm and apologize for your mistakes and learn from them and don't do them again. And that's what has to happen here. We know better. And so we know this is a disease. We know what many of the causes are now. And we've learned that in the last 15 years. And so we know better and we need to do better. And we have to take back this idea of this simple math equation that is harmful, and it's created a culture of blame and shame, and it's sucked the empathy and the compassion from a population of people who desperately need it in order to seek treatment.